Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. Over the years, many survivors, men and women alike, gave testimonies about their experience in the forests among the partisans. They started giving testimonies and writing about this period immediately after the war, but some kept silent until later years when they grew older. Most of them were female, who had refrained from speaking until then. One of them, Dina Kagan, for example, said in a testimony she gave only in 1996, "I never told my story because I never thought my story was important. Now it is important to me that the grandchildren will hear it." Mira Verbin testified that for 40 years, she did not tell her memories of the Holocaust and partisans. And only in the 1980s did she speak for the first time. In most testimonies, partisans talk mainly on the harsh life conditions in the forests, in nature, about the combat actions, relations with the non-Jewish partisans and with the local population, and more. However, the legitimization to openly discuss gender issues and tell intimate memories has developed in later years, both from the viewpoint of the interviewers and the interviewees. What can we learn about the unique experiences of Jewish women among partisans as they are expressed in their own testimonies? This is a question I will focus on in this presentation. I would like to give you a glimpse of what it was like to be a partisan woman based on the stories of those who were there. Their different experience started at the very moment of escape from the ghetto. Moshe Rodnitsky, who guided groups of Jews from the Vilna ghetto to the forest about 200 kilometers on foot, says he was in shock when he saw women who came to the meeting point with high heels. Another female survivor recalls, "We thought we would come to the forest and they, the Soviet partisans, would receive us nicely, but it wasn't the case. They treated us badly, put us in line and said that Jews do not know how to fight and should not receive weapons. They said girls were not needed." She continued to tell, "I remember we sat in a group peeling potatoes and said we wanted to fight. There was hunger, dirt, we were full of lice. It was very hard. I had to wrap my legs with rugs because the partisans didn't give shoes to women. Despite the maltreatment toward women, a few did manage to climb up the ranks." Chena Borovska was a commander in the Rudniki forest, and even though she was a woman among mostly men, she knew how to pave the way for her benefits and had become powerful and influential among Jews and Soviets alike. Yocheved Reznik, a partisan who was considered older, she was in her mid-30s, testified about Borovska. She was a staunch communist, very talented. She knew very well the other commanders' tricks. She also knew how to shoot from who to get rid of. And indeed, a controversial affair occurred in the forests when 6 Jewish partisans were shot to death after being accused of collaboration. Borovska was among those who falsely blamed them and organized their execution. According to Yocheved Reznik, Borovska got rid of them because she feared they would undermine her command position. After they were shot in November 1943, Resnick said, no one wanted to bury them, not to strip them of their clothes, not to take off their boots. So I went over, wrapped them in parachute fabric, and then we buried them. Resnick, being a woman, took it upon herself to take care of the dead, prepare them for burial in almost a nursing way. And indeed, Resnick was called the forest mother. One partisan, Shlomo Baran, recalled, she did everything. If anyone was injured, she took care of him. Baran went to a partisan mission and was riding a horse. He tells, there was a lake I had to cross and there was ice on it. I fell with the horse into the water. I had 2 hand grenades and a gun. I knew that if I returned to the base without them, it means a death sentence. So I took off all my clothes, remained completely naked, only with a weapon, and ran back to the base. The horse drowned. When I arrived at the base, Mrs. Resnick grabbed me, opened my mouth, and began to pour in vodka. I was frozen, and she knew how to take care of me. I got up the next day, as if nothing had happened. She saved my life. Life conditions in the wild forest were hard, and maintaining hygiene, for example, was an issue that was very important to women. All the time in the partisan, I dreamed of sleeping in a bed with clean sheets, says one of them. One of the Jewish partisans, who was a young boy aged 15, 16, tells how women used to take a shower. The partisans showered once a week or 2 weeks. When we got to the forest, when the winter started, we heated water. I climbed a tree with 2 buckets. They, the girls, got undressed, and I poured water on them. I was the only one they agreed to be seen naked by. After a while, we built a steam room, sauna. Problem of pregnancy was crucial and sensitive in the forest. It was forbidden, but happened. I will share with you one such case. Emma Peneusov was in the partisan unit with her husband. In her USC Shoah Foundation testimony, she recalled, one day I felt something is happening inside me, but I didn't know what it was. I waited and waited, but finally decided to see a partisan doctor. Although she went to consult with him, she didn't let him check her out of embarrassment, but he urged her to let him check her because he had suspicion about her condition. He checked me and said, I am pregnant, she said, and elaborated how it happened. Life went on in the forest. We had comfortable bunks. They all slept together in special hiding huts they dug in the forest, like that, zimlankas. And so I got pregnant. After 2 years, I had no menstruation at all. A miracle, but a bad miracle. When I heard about it, I just wanted to look for a weapon and commit suicide. 2 weeks before, a woman in the forest gave birth and the partisans strangled the baby. So what awaits me? For that, I have to suffer here. Peneusov recalls she was ashamed, did not want to tell anyone, felt like she had done something terrible. She finally gave birth to a baby boy a few days after Vilna was liberated under heavy bombing while she was in a dark basement. But that baby survived and today is a medical doctor, lives in Israel with his family. Chana Borovska also gave birth in the forest to a baby girl and managed to smuggle her to a local farmer's family who kept her till liberation. Women in the partisans were also exposed to sexual abuse and rape. Mira Verbin was a partisan in the Naroch forest, and only when she grew older, she talked about it in her testimony found in the Fortunov archive. She recalled that while wandering in the forest with another female friend, they fear not only the Germans, but also their fellow male partisans. It was a danger because we were young girls, Soviet soldiers, paratroopers who had been at war for several years, roamed the forests. They were hungry for a woman. It was very dangerous, and we met them and came across them. Verbin goes on. In the forest, you could not do without curses. A variety of curses in all languages and all nonsense. Complete lexicon. They, the Soviet partisans, wanted to rape us, and we were very scared. And once I jumped out of a Zimlanka window in one such case. No one responded. The commanders did not care. There was no one to talk to. They just said they would check. A woman's position was very hard. Girls who came with me to the forest without a towel, without soap, had to pay with their own bodies to get something. It was hard. Life was very frustrating. We were so hopeful that after the ghetto, it would finally be quiet. We were not accepted to the partisan units. She adds, a girl had two options, a guy by her side, or she is strong enough to deal with the environment. First of all, to know how to curse. I had a friend that it helped her. No one wanted to mess with her. And indeed, women had better chances of survival if they were associated with a man. Many couples were created during that time among the Jewish partisans. Women needed protection, and if they got a guardian, they were relatively safe. Many of those couples got married after the war and built new families. But not always women could rely on men protection. Rivka Gvint tells of the early winter months of 1942 in the Naroch forest, where men and women had to prepare for the extreme cold. During this time, the men separated from the women. The young single men took care of themselves. The lonely women were left helpless, homeless, in the mud, almost naked, in terrible filth. The conditions in the forest were so bad that some women wanted to go back to the ghetto they had escaped from. In the fall of 1943, the Germans conducted a manhunt in the Naroch forest. They entered the forest with dogs and murdered anyone they came across with and was suspected of being a partisan. Mira Verbin testifies. In the partisan camp, panic began. The commanders gathered everyone in the middle of the night and said that only the men are allowed to join them to escape the hunt. What about the girls? It did not interest them. Shoshana Goldstein testified to the same incident. In this situation, the partisan headquarters dispersed the company, leaving only the people in possession of weapons. They said, there are too many girls here. More than half of the group, and especially women, were left without the opportunity to fight. During this hunt, one Jewish woman even dressed up as a man in order to increase her chances of survival. Most of the Jewish women were left with no weapon, no adequate clothes, and were in fact abandoned to their death. I would like to conclude with a personal story. My grandmother, Chaya Shapira, was 19 when she escaped alone to the forest from the Vilna ghetto on the day of its liquidation, end of September 1943. When she arrived after 3 days of walking barefoot and sick, she was surrounded by the partisans who started inquiring her. What's going on in the ghetto? Did you see my family? Etc. She told them about the liquidation. The ghetto does not exist anymore, she said, and so everyone spread among the trees, crying and depressed. All but one young woman who recently lost her husband in the ghetto and managed to arrive at the forest. This woman, Pessia Bernstein, took care of my grandmother, washed the blood off her legs, and wrapped the wounds. She then gave her some food. My grandmother never forgot Pessia's taking care of her. This is a woman. This is a feminine instinct that was so needed back then and there. Thank you very much for your attention.